Hi everyone, it's Julia from Dodge Nature Center, and today we're going on a hike and talking about Minnesota wildlife. But before we start hiking, I want to talk about the needs that wildlife have. All animals have 5 needs: food, water, shelter, space, and air. And different animals have different needs for all of those things, and so they live in different habitats. Today we're going to visit just a few of Minnesota's habitats and hopefully find some signs of wildlife. Let's go! The first habitat we'll visit is a wetland. You can hear the chorus frogs singing. In the springtime, the males sing to attract the females in order to breed. And hiding just in front of us in the pond is another frog, keeping perfectly still. You can just see its head. It's very well camouflaged, which protects it from predators like birds and other fish that might eat it. Looking at the edge of the water, you can see a great blue heron. Minnesota lakes, rivers, and streams are a great home for animals like the great blue heron, whose diet includes things like small fish, amphibians, and reptiles. In this photo, you can see the bill is pointed and serrated, which allows the heron to pierce its prey that's swimming in the water. We typically see them in Minnesota beginning in March and through October. Another common animal found in Minnesota wetlands are beavers. You can see this one swimming not far from where that heron was wading. Beavers are incredible swimmers, and they have several adaptations that make life in the water easier. One thing that they have is that their lips are able to close behind their large front teeth, which enables them to carry branches in their mouths without letting water into their airway. And beavers will use these branches and twigs to build shelters known as burrows or beaver lodges. And you typically find these near the edges of a wetland, and they're used to shelter themselves from predators. Now let's see if we can find one. All right, we're in luck. Just down the shore is a beaver lodge. Now, a beaver lodge is different than a beaver dam. A lodge is built as a shelter for the beaver, and they access it from underwater. A dam is built in the middle of moving water, like in a stream or river, and it's meant to back up water and create what we call beaver pond, which is an ideal habitat for beavers. And nearby the lodge, you can see here all these clues where the beavers have been working. The next habitat we're going to visit is the prairie. And I've found a hole in the ground just off the path, a sign that someone's been digging. Several Minnesota wildlife will dig holes in the prairie for shelter and for getting around, making tunnels. Animals like voles, mice, and moles use their hands to dig these tunnels. And other animals like snakes will kind of take over these to use for shelter. This goofy looking orb on the stem of a goldenrod plant is called a gull. Last fall, insects like different varieties of flies laid their eggs on the stems of these grasses, and in response, the plant started to grow around the egg. Eventually, the entire egg is encased, and all winter long it sits there protected by the stem. And then in the springtime, when warmer weather starts to come, that insect inside eats its way out. You can see there's a little hole here where the insect has crawled its way out. Or potentially a bird that was foraging for insects pecked through and ate that larva. The prairie is a great spot to look up into the sky because there aren't any trees obstructing your view, and looking up today, high above you can see a bald eagle soaring. And while eagles are often found in forests, they hunt near bodies of water and fly over the prairies. And what they're looking for in the water are things like fish and reptiles, amphibians, and even small mammals, such as rabbits and squirrels. And even though this eagle looks far away, they have exceptional vision, which allows them to see their prey even from way up there. And once their prey is spotted, they'll dive down, and using their powerful talons, they'll grab their prey and dig their talons into it and carry it off. For shelter, bald eagles build large nests that are around 5 to 6 feet in width and somewhere around 2 to 3 feet in height. If you want to see a live feed of an eagle's nest, check out the Minnesota DNR's Eagle Cam, and you can find that on their website. The last habitat we'll visit today is the forest. No surprise here, the first animal we see in the forest is a gray squirrel. These animals are quite common in Minnesota and highly adapted to living in populated areas. Up next is another sign of wildlife. These large holes in this dead tree are clues of a feeding site. An animal like a pileated woodpecker used their sharp bill to drill a hole into this dead tree, and what they probably found inside were insect larvae and other small arthropods that made for a tasty meal. There's a wild turkey walking down our trail. This is a male turkey. They're sometimes called toms or gobblers, and what distinguishes him from a female are his fanned out tail feathers, his featherless blue head, and the beard of hair-like feathers that fall from his chest, which you can see when he turns to the side there. The color of a male turkey's head actually can change color from blue to red based on how excited they are. Not far away was the rest of the flock. Wild turkeys do move in groups rather than on their own, and they spend their days foraging the forest floor for things like insects, grasses, grains, buds, berries, acorns, and even frogs and snakes if they can find one. And right here in the middle of the path, we've come across a tuft of fur, maybe from a gray squirrel or rabbit. It's another clue that animals are in this area and hunting. We've seen a lot of really cool things on our hike today. Let's talk about how our wildlife were getting their needs met. We saw how animals hunt and forage for food, like bugs, seeds, berries, and animals of prey. We saw how water is used as a shelter and hiding place for frogs, hunting grounds for the great blue heron, and helpful for beavers transporting branches. We visited 3 different habitats, a wetland, a prairie, and a forest, which provide unique spaces that help animals survive there. We saw a couple different shelters built by animals like the Beaver Lodge and the Prairie Hole. And of course, last but not least, all wildlife needs clean air to breathe. Learning the needs of Minnesota wildlife helps us to understand how we can protect their habitats. If we want wildlife to stick around, we have to respect their homes, space, food, water, and air. The next time you're on a hike, practice your observation skills and notice what animals are living in the area. Think about the ways you could improve that habitat, like picking up any litter you might see, or being careful not to disturb any animal homes. Thanks for joining me on this hike. I hope you learned something new about Minnesota wildlife that you can share with others. Be kind to nature, and we'll see you next time.